Welcome. Today we have a really good topic. It's something that I've heard so many times.
Yeah, Mike, we've been getting a lot of feedback. People love the show, but they are really confused and at the same time excited to learn more about shipping, which is the next step.
Yeah, and that's why I say it's a really boring topic, but it's an important topic because
It gets technical.
it does, yeah, and people get hung up on like a lot of the small details that are involved in the shipping. So I'm going to explain how the entire shipping process works, but just so we're really clear, remember this: when you're going through the sourcing process of any product, make sure that when you get your quotes from the product, you also want to just get a quote on shipping. The reason I say that is because there's two primary ways that, well, I mean, these are the only two ways. Unless you get a pigeon or something, but you could ship by air. So that means it's on a plane, UPS, whatever, that it actually gets shipped by air. And there's also a second method, which is shipping by sea.
So what are the pros and cons of each?
So, okay, the pros of shipping by air is that it's going to be much quicker. Now, it means, because I've had products that I ship from China to the US and it comes in 5 days. I just did, like, for the mastermind, it was a great example because I wanted them shipped to me. So I ordered some backpacks and some shirts. And it was really cool because, and a lot of the examples that I share are incorporated, like, they're not to sell. I found these really cool backpacks and I wanted my logo on it. So the first order I did before, I did the stitching, right? It's like embossed. Then the second order I liked the look of having a bigger logo that was a heat transfer. But that just is talking about, like, when we were talking about packaging and all that. But the reason I want to share this story is so I wanted them to come relatively quick. I didn't need them in 5 days. I needed them more like in 2 weeks. But sea shipping just wasn't going to cut it.
How long is sea shipping?
So sea shipping you want to bank on, because that's another problem with the sea shipping. They might say it's 30 days, right? To factor in about 30 days. But if your product's ready to ship, like the day after that boat left, right now you're waiting for the next boat. So I've heard of it taking 6 weeks in some cases.
Wow.
And I've heard it taking 3 weeks in some cases, right? But you have to understand it's going to take longer.
And I would guess that anyone would be expecting to save money.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. That was a lot of what I've heard for all these years, and you had mentioned to me that that's a question we got about 4 or 5 of those questions. That is it always cheaper to do sea shipping? And it's not.
Wait it out.
That's right, because it's not always cheaper. So like with the backpacks and the shirts that I had got, it was very minor, the difference in shipping. And when you brought it to per piece that was being shipped, it worked out to be ridiculous. Even if I didn't need it to be shipped a little quicker, it would have made no sense to wait for it to come on the boat and all those things. Because what matters is you want to get a quote based on both. Because you understand, all of you listening, you understand this. If you're shipping a box of feathers or you're shipping a box of gold, right? It's still a box that you're shipping, but it's going to be difference in prices.
Lighter.
Right. So, and because people tell me, like, well, how much is shipping? And there's no answer that the shipping is this much. Now you can estimate. So when you estimate, that's where you might get into a little bit of trouble, right? Because you want to just know what it's going to be. So you want an actual quote of what it's going to be. Now, what I really like to look at is, what is the pro of shipping air? So the pro of shipping air is that it's faster, may or may not be more or less expensive, but it also will ship directly to Amazon, all in one take, air shipping right to Amazon, right? And it's going to happen a lot faster. Now, one of the cons of shipping by air is that if you're sending like a ton of stuff that's really big and really bulky and really heavy, the price difference might not justify you paying the more for your entire shipment for air.
What do you mean by entire shipment?
So one of the things that I like to talk to the students about is that, so let's just say that you get a quote for air, you get a quote for sea. Now, one of the cons of sea shipping is that it takes a long time, right? But and it might be cheaper. So what I like to say when I say part of your shipment, what you can do is maybe you have 10% of your shipment go by air, then 90% go by sea. Because think of it this way, you might say you save, let's just say, let's use an easy number, $300, right? Let's just say you save $300 by shipping by sea instead of air. It's not a big shipment. Let's just say, I mean, I'm using really rough numbers because we don't know unless we have a specific product we're talking about, but we don't need to have a specific product for this example. It's the theory behind it. So what you do is say it's $300 cheaper to ship by sea. And that, what you have to think in your head, you say, okay, well, let's just say it takes a month to go by sea. Let's say it'll get there in 5 days if I do by air. Think of the lost revenue. So those 25 days of lost revenue where you're sitting idle waiting for your product to get there could far exceed that $300, right? So say you're selling a product that's $30. If you don't think you could sell 10 of them in 25 days, right? That's, and now we're talking gross numbers, but when you put it in perspective like that, it makes you think like, okay, well, why don't I do this? Why don't I
pay a little more?
Yeah, pay a little more
quicker
for 10% of it. And then, so let's say that we're ordering 2,000 of an item, just to use raw numbers. So let's have 200 of them air shipped there. Let's have the other 1,800 shipped by sea. So that way you're getting the best of both worlds. So if you're saving, let's say your savings was $800 or $900 by doing it this way, but it's going to cost you $200 more, let's just say, for the portion that you're going to airship. Now, that lost time that you're making up for being up and running, because think of it this way, it's not just 3 weeks of lost revenue. It's also you're 3 weeks more behind the game. It's 3 weeks less that you're actually implementing.
And not learning.
That's right, because I love giving people the tools. I love our inner circle. You know, there's been over 1,000 people in the inner circle. I learn from them all the time. It's really cool, like to be able to do that, share a lot of knowledge with them, but there's always going to be a unique situation. And we're always able to help each other, give advice. And, you know, that's a lot of the people that really blew their mind when I said, well, you know, because they're so struggling. They're like, well, I don't know. What do I do? And I said, well, why wouldn't you just do both? And I can't believe I didn't think of that, because it's true. It's the education is the key, right? I can give you all the tools. We could all help each other, support each other, and love each other, because it's a community, right?
It really is.
But why wouldn't you want to get started now instead of 3 weeks later if you're talking about a really small price difference? And the lost revenue that you would have by waiting 3 more weeks could far exceed that investment. But it's a personal decision.
So what you're saying is that anyone listening out there, if they were to start an Amazon business and found a product, now they definitely need to get quotes for both.
Yeah, because you don't want to guess, right? Because people will ask me before they have a quote, should I ship this by air? Should I ship it by sea? And I'm like, well, how would I even know that unless you tell me what are the price differences? And I can give you my advice, but it's a personal decision, right? Because some people that are really well funded might say, well, for that small price difference, I'm going to have the whole thing go by air.
Right.
Right? And sometimes I've even seen where air shipping is cheaper than sea shipping.
In what circumstances with that?
So I'll give you a really good example. So when fidget spinners were really hot, right? I had a bunch of fidget spinners and I wanted them like yesterday, right? And I was thinking, well, okay, I'm going to have a bunch of just based on my experience, I was going to say, well, I'm going to have a bunch of them go by sea, but let me get just maybe a few hundred there right now. You know, if I need more, because see for me, because I ordered a big quantity of them. So I had them warehoused in China and they were ready to ship. And I wanted them right now. So what I did is I got a quote for the air shipping and I said, wait, for that many fidget spinners, and I believe, I want to say like that it ended up being like around 20 cents a fidget spinner. You know, they're small. And I'm thinking like for 20 cents, like why would I even consider doing sea shipping? So I had the fidget spinner shipped by air. And that also ties back into what we were saying is that, you know, you might have a preconceived notion that one is going to be more expensive or less than expensive than the other because they're really heavy. So, but they don't take up a lot of space, but they're really heavy. So I was thinking like, okay, but you know, there's so many of them. Like in my head, I was thinking, wow, that many fidget spinners, it's going to take up way more space. But then that was just me guessing that I'm thinking like, oh, when you think thousands of something, like that's going to take up a lot of space. Then, because I know, like I'm really good with the supplements. Like I know how many supplements fit in a box. I know the size. Like that, I've got down to a science pretty well just based on shipping so many boxes. And I don't ship it. The manufacturer ships them. But it's something that I white label, right? In this case, this is my product that I put my own packaging, I put my own stickers. So it wasn't like the typical fidget spinner. So in my head, I was thinking, okay, like this is not going to be a good deal. But then I saw it was a really good deal. So that's why my best advice is don't guess if you should do air shipping, sea shipping. Get quotes on both, and then you decide, okay, this makes sense to maybe ship some air, ship some by sea. Or it makes sense to ship all by air based on the price difference. Or it makes sense to just wait it out. Oh, well, I don't want to give the product, but it was a super heavy, really large item. And it just didn't make sense for the student to ship any of them by air. It just didn't make sense. The price, they got a really good deal on this really big, heavy, bulky item. Like I want to say they were like 40 pounds each or something.
Wow.
So like that, you know, you can...
Which you don't recommend.
No, and I really don't. And I was a little, I mean, the margins were amazing, but I'm always stressing, like, don't get really big, bulky, heavy, complicated items when you start off.
Because this is where it gets complicated with those items.
That's right. And they had gotten the quote ahead of time for the sea shipping. All the numbers made sense. But I said, well, why don't you just find... And they said, well, they just said it's going to be really expensive. I said, well, you know, what, instead of just accepting like it's what's really expensive, like, you know, my idea, your idea, someone else's idea of really expensive is different.
Completely.
Yeah, because what you consider expensive, I might consider really expensive, you know, like, or vice versa, right? If you think something's cheap, I might think, well, no, I think that's expensive.
Exactly. So you can never guess.
That's right. So we get numbers. We want bona fide numbers. We want to actually know what because then we could put a pencil to it. You can't put a pencil to expensive or cheap, right? You can't divide, you know, 1,000 units by cheap. You know, you need a number. And then that's how we figure out what makes sense. So don't get too hung up on shipping. All you really need to know, I mean, I know it sounds complicated at times. It's coming from China. It's really complicated. But the truth is, it's not complicated because they facilitate that shipping process.
I was going to say, I think with a sourcing agent, that's why you want to have one, because they will also make the process much easier.
That's right, because I don't know the ins and outs of physically getting a product from China to the US. What I do know is that I know someone that knows exactly how to get it from China to the US. And I just need a price for that. You know, I can't rebuild an engine in a car, but I can drive a car, right? Like, my ability to not be able to fix my car at all doesn't impede my ability to drive that car, right? So I can't say, well, I don't really know how a transmission works, so I can't drive a car because I don't know how a transmission works.
Right.
All I need to know is I push the button and I move it in gear, right? Like I don't need to understand how it all works.
Exactly. But just to summarize for anyone listening, so the process of getting your product from China straight to Amazon, how does that work?
Yeah, so right from China, right to Amazon. And it's one of the things that we teach in the video series, like how do you print your shipping labels? How do you set the shipment up in Amazon's end? But if you go to amsecrets.com and enter just your first name and your email, you can get the free video series that walks you through like a lot of really cool stuff about how do you start this crazy thing called an Amazon business.
Right.
But to answer your question about how does it ultimately get from China, in very simple terms, to Amazon. And I teach this in the training video, but you have to set the shipment up in Amazon. So you basically have to let Amazon know that the product's coming. Once you've let Amazon know that the product's coming, now they're anticipating that shipment. Right. So they're going to tell you the addresses where it needs to go to ultimately. So and I'm glad you asked that question because a lot of people don't understand how this part works.
That is probably one of our biggest questions. How do I know?
That's right. And there's no set answer for that because it's not a problem. It's actually a really smooth really economical system that Amazon has set up. I mean, I think they're better than the post office. Like, I think their organization for moving mail is like way better than the post office.
Absolutely, only improving.
That's right. So, and that's why it doesn't need to be complicated, because you tell Amazon. So let's say those Saru scissors, right?
Right.
Like, you want to send 1,000 of them to Amazon. So you're going to tell Amazon, hey, I'm sending in 1,000 scissors. Now, Amazon's not going to tell you, well, send them to the warehouse in Tracy, California, all of them. What they're going to do is their algorithm is so smart. They know where scissors are purchased all around the country. So they might say, okay, 400 go to Tracy, California, 600 go to Texas.
So they spread them out.
That's right, because just as we all know, when we order on Amazon, we get it like in 2 days. Like, it's miraculous, right? Like, you order at night and then like 2 days later, it's at your house.
So the point is that you don't have to deal with any of that.
No, because once all you have to worry about is where Amazon tells you to send the product. See, part of the having a sourcing agent, and you can get any sourcing agent. I'm not saying to use mine. I'm not saying to join my inner circle unless it's right for you, right? But it gives you that comfort level. So with my sourcing agent, they have dedicated people that just work on shipping. Those people facilitate the shipping process for you. So Amazon would tell you, hey, Saru, send 400 of Saru scissors here to California, send the other 600 to New York. They'll strategically place your scissors around the country, so wherever anybody orders from, it'll be fast, easy shipping. So you just generate that in the system. That's really easy. You just tell the system that you're sending in 1,000 Saru scissors. Then you notify the people in China, like, hey, okay, this is where 400 have to go. This is where 600 have to go. I'm emailing you the label that Amazon wants on there. And that's it. I mean, I know it's hard to so overly simplify something.
It is, but you have to, because it can seem really complicated.
And it is a complicated process, but it's also complicated to build an engine for a car, right? But it's not complicated to drive a car. And that's why you just need to be concerned with how much does it cost for the two main methods. I don't know of a third method yet. I mean, from China to here, you can take a boat or a plane. You can't walk, right? Or can't drive. There's no truck shipping, right? From China to, the ocean. But I know, because you were telling me we got so many questions about that. So I wanted to really explain how the shipping process works, because what I've always said in the past is just get a shipping quote when you're figuring out if your product makes sense, and then tell them to ship it, right? But then so many questions you were telling me came up about, well, what are the logistics? How does this work? So I wanted to make sure that, we spent time explaining to everybody this exact process and how it works.
And we'll get more into Amazon FBA and how that works too, because it all ties in with shipping from China. Yeah.
Our goal here is to give you all topics, all the information on everything that has built successful Amazon businesses for us. It's not a race to the finish line. It's a continuously growing process. And that's why for 2018, I wanted to go a lot more in depth and give a lot more information about what has worked, but also what has failed. And I wasn't going to get into this right now, but just a really quick story. I personally made a really bad mistake with shipping. So me too, because you don't know what you don't know, right?
Right.
And I didn't know that you could go inside the system, because I didn't have a mentor teach me about how to get started on Amazon. So I made a really bad mistake. And it was just a mistake that was financial. But what I thought was, okay, so I told Amazon, I want to ship my products to you. It was right when I first started. They said, okay, cool, ship them here, ship them there. I didn't know there was a little button there where I could print their shipping label, because this is domestic, right?
Right.
And so I'm like, okay, so they give me the address. So I print out their address, because it says, do you want to ship it yourself, or do you want to use our shipping label? And I'm thinking, well, yeah, I could just go to the UPS store, bring it there, ship it. So it ended up being like $60 a box. And I mean, there was a bunch in that box, so it wasn't really too bad. It ended up being like, what are you talking about? 40 cents per bottle. Like, that's not bad. I was selling them for $30, $40, right? Like, that's a small cost of doing business.
Absolutely.
But then I said, well, the next time I went to do a shipment, I said, let me just see how much it would be, because I didn't really know that I could just Like, I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know I could just click that button and use their shipping account. Right? I'm thinking, like, when it was saying, like, use our shipping, I'm thinking, well, I'll just go to the UPS store. Like, you gave me the address. And so I put use their label, and it was like $14 a box. So, you know, I lost hundreds and hundreds of dollars by just not knowing what I didn't know. I mean, I think it ended up being like almost $1,000 that I ended up losing.
Wow.
That was mistake one. The other part of that mistake, this is ridiculous. Like, this is how much I didn't know when I started. So the
Nobody
lab,
does.
Yeah, and people think, like, you know, you either pay for lessons or you pay for mistakes.
Exactly.
One or the other. Like, I paid for mistakes. And, you know, I went through tens of thousands of dollars in mistakes to help people not make those same mistakes. Because I would never make the same mistake twice. But a really big mistake I made too, and that's why I said I ultimately lost thousands in shipping. Because, so the lab, you know, I said, okay, you know, I found these really cool supplements. I'm going to make them my own. I made my own blend. It was really cool. I was really excited. Really nice labels, really cool bottles. I'm all excited. So the lab says, okay, Mike, you know, your bottles are done. I'm like, yes, you know. So I said, okay, ship them to me, right? So I paid for them to ship them to me, and I had to pay that shipping cost. And then I shipped them to Amazon through the UPS store, right? So all I had to do, and now I do this every time, I just email the label to the lab and say, ship it to Amazon. I rented a storage unit.
Wow.
Right? So I went to like a mini storage unit, and I get all these boxes sent. Like, I have my truck, like, I'm loading boxes. I'm like opening up, counting bottles. Like, it took me hours to count my first batch, right? Like, I didn't realize, send it to Amazon. They'll count it for me. I don't have to have it shipped to me.
It seems like you try to overcomplicate it.
Yeah, only because I didn't know, right? So, like, I'm just like everybody else, right? If you don't know something, you don't know something. Yeah. But you look at the money I wasted in a storage unit,
and
thinking the time counting them, hauling them, and literally loading them in my truck, driving to the UPS store, carrying each box in one at a time. The second order I did, I clicked a button on my computer that said send. I emailed the shipping label to my lab. Then Amazon said your shipment has arrived at Amazon. Like, look at the process I did just not knowing. And that's why when you take everything into account, you know, shipping both ways, me actually spending hours doing it, and the $300 a month for a storage unit, you know, Southern California storage units are expensive, and I got a big one. So I could, you know, I'm thinking, oh, like, okay. And then when I run low at Amazon, I'll just ship more. And when I run low again, I'll ship more. Right. And, you know, just not knowing what I didn't know. And, but it's like those kind of mistakes, and there's tons of them, and I don't mind sharing them. That is what makes me qualified to teach people, and being part of, you know, our inner circle is how people know that they have other people they can count on. So I hope that makes sense on the shipping. I didn't mean to go a long drawn out story on my own mistakes, but, you know, you have to admit your own mistakes, right? And it also helps you to get better. And by sharing that mistake, I don't think any of you will ever make that mistake. So Hopefully, right. If you just heard me say that whole story, what I just did, and you still do what I did, then you should re-examine internet marketing. Next week, we have a really cool topic. I'm so excited. It's, again, you know, they're all my favorite ones, right? But this is, you know, shipping was a little bit boring. So last time I didn't really say that it was going to be one of my favorite topics, because shipping's not really one of my favorite topics. But, you know, as we're building our foundation right now, and we'll continue to give you really good value. If you want to just get the free video report, check out some like videos, how to actually do some of these things. It's no credit card. You just go to amsecrets.com, enter just your first name and your email, and I'll meet you on the other side.